Today I wanted to talk about the 10 things that are difficult in India for an American expat. And this is from my perspective, this is not a generalization. This is from my experiences, how I felt being an Indian American in India. So without further ado, let's get to it. So the first thing that's really hard to get used to would probably be honking. When you walk down the street and you just hear like honks everywhere you go, it's hard to get used to that as an American, where honking is considered rude. So personally, like I just walk down and I get a little mad. Like honestly, I get a little pissed off. Like right as soon as they cross you and you're walking, they honk right in your ear, and you're like, "Come on, serious?" But that's really an American thing, I think. In India, it's not like they're personally honking at you. It's sort of like it's just a cultural thing. They're just like trying to warn people about just to get out of the way, because there's so many cars and there's so many people. There's dogs, there's monkeys, and there's just so much stuff going on. So I think honking is a part of the culture. But as an Indian American living in India, it's definitely a tough thing to get used to and not take personally. You just sort of gotta brush it off. And I play little games with it. I'm like trying to guess whether this person is gonna honk at me or not. Maybe I'm thinking too much about it, but just something I've noticed. Now, for point number 2 is people cutting you in lines. So suppose you're at like a Subway or whatever, McDonald's, KFC, airport, anything, train station. People are gonna cut you. People are gonna get in front of you and act like it's nothing. They don't even care. So people are just gonna cut you. And as an American, that's like considered rude. So at first, when we first moved to India around 8 or 9 years ago, I was getting pissed off all the time. I was like, come on, I've been standing here for like 5 minutes and you're just gonna cut me like I don't exist? And they're like, yeah, that's pretty much what we're gonna do. And the hardest thing is when they don't stop. So it's like one person cuts you and the next person cuts you and you're like, so I think over time I've also gained this sort of Indianness where I don't cut people, but I like use tactics to maintain my position in the line or whatever. And tied to that point is when people also put their hand on your shoulder. And I think this is mostly for guys. I don't think girls are going to experience this, but for guys, when you're standing in line, guys are going to put their hands on your shoulders, especially if there's a lot of people, or like I've even had somebody put their hands on my waist, and that was weird. I was like, come on, man, don't do that. But it's also a cultural thing because there's so many people. So like you have like crowds of like hundreds of people gathering together for various events and occasions all over India. So this is a very cultural thing, and it might make you uncomfortable. It doesn't happen all the time. This happened to me like a handful number of times, but it has happened. Point number 3, people spitting and peeing everywhere. Now the peeing is a little bit more infrequent, but the spitting is everywhere, and people are spitting this beetle leaf juice. They're chewing and they're spitting it everywhere. And I mean, as long as it doesn't get spit on you, it's not such a big deal, but it's not a pleasant sight visually. The pee, at least, let's get to the peeing now. The peeing is also everywhere on the side of the road. Pretty much no discretion. If there's a space, somebody's going to be peeing in there. A guy. Girls don't pee on the road. Guys pee on the road. So there's going to be somebody peeing there. It's obviously smells. A lot of places smell like piss. It's a tough one. I don't know what to say about it. First, it doesn't bother me that much. I've gotten used to that. You kind of just get used to it after living and seeing it all the time. But as a first-time traveler coming here, you might get weirded out by that. Point number 4. So now this is a more difficult thing for me as an Indian American. So I look brown. I am brown. So everybody thinks I speak Hindi or whatever local language is spoken in the area. People think I speak that, and that's very frustrating when you don't speak it, and you're constantly like assume that you're speaking it to tell everybody like, no, I don't speak that. It's challenging. It's definitely challenging. But there's obviously a language barrier. English is spoken. English is the second official language behind Hindi. So there will be a language barrier if you go to more rural areas. And even in the cities, a lot of people have real broken English. You can obviously get along and speak. Point number 5. Now, sort of tying into the previous point, sort of everyone asking you where you're from. I don't sound like a typical Indian. I sort of have this kind of Indian accent, but it's not like totally Indian. But people ask me everywhere, like, where are you from? Where are you from? And I mean, it's normal. It's totally normal. I actually don't really know how to answer that question. It's a tough question because I'm from the U.S. But then if you say you're from the U.S., you're gonna get like 30 questions, 30 follow-ups. So I try not to say I'm from the US. I try to say I'm from the place where I'm staying at the time. So if I'm staying in Delhi, I'm saying I'm from Delhi. If I'm staying in Bangalore, I'm saying I'm from Bangalore, and vice versa, to use to my advantage. If I say I'm from Delhi, then people think you speak Hindi. And if you don't speak Hindi, then people are like, what the hell kind of person are you from Delhi and you don't speak Hindi? What? But Bangalore is easier because Bangalore is sort of a melting pot. So you can get away with saying, I don't speak Kannada, or I don't speak Hindi, or I don't speak that. You can get away with that. But when you say you're from the US, especially as an Indian American, you're entering some dangerous territory. Or even as an American, I would say, you're gonna get those 20 questions. You're gonna get a lot of questions. Like, what's it like? Is it like Hollywood everywhere? Is it like movie stars everywhere? You get a lot of questions based on how the US is portrayed in the media. So you sort of got to be patient with that. So it's a tricky point, that one, but you sort of have to maneuver around it and try to find the best answer for that situation. Point number 6. Now, this was so hard for me when we first moved to India in 2012, was not getting the brands that you like, the brands in the store. So when you go to the store here or the market, you don't get what you want. You don't. The selection is really limited, is what I mean. And you sort of get used to that in America and the West. You have like 50,000 brands. You have like whatever you want, and you can get like so many different things. But when you come here, there's like 3 options maybe, and even that's a luxury. And a lot of the times, everything is masala flavored. The chips are masala flavored chips. The juice might be masala flavored. I once had a masala flavored toothpaste. That's a memory I probably won't forget for a while. But that's what I'm saying. So the brand choice is very limited, and you're not going to get what you want. But there's a flip side to that, and there's a flip side to all of these. There's good things. I think in every point that I've stated, there's something good that can be taken out of it. And the good thing here is that you sort of realize that you don't need so much choice. You don't need 50,000 brands. You don't need like 100 brands of chips, 100 brands of toothpaste, 100 brands of cereal. You don't need that. You need like maybe 2 or 3, and you can manage. You don't need it. So it's a luxury. So that's what I realized personally. You sort of lose your favorites, and you sort of learn to adjust and adapt in a way. That's how I found it. Now, point number 7 is the heat. Oh boy, so I'm on my roof right now, and it's coming towards mid-April, getting towards the end of April, and it's around 95 degrees Fahrenheit, which is pretty hot, but it's not even the worst yet. I think it'll hit in the hundreds, especially, so I'm in Bangalore right now, Bangalore, India. It's in the south, and somehow it doesn't get as hot. I don't know the geography of it and how it works, or the climate and the weathering system, how that works, but here it goes around in the 90s, 95s, high 90s max. But in Delhi, where I was staying, oh boy, in the summer, it goes to around like 105, 110, 115 some days. Even with the AC running, you're still sweating. It's crazy. Like, it's so hot. And if you step outside just for a quick walk or an errand in the summer in Delhi, you're going to come back sweating, no question. So, and if you're playing sports outside, forget it. You're going to have like heat stroke. I'm not even joking. It's that hot. It's definitely a challenge, getting used to the heat. I was in Boston, Massachusetts before we came here, and that was like, we had cold winters. The summers would get to like maybe mid 80s, maximum 90s, but it wasn't 115 for sure. All right, point number 8. 8. And now this one is something that's also very hard to get used to, and it's tied in with the standing in line stuff and things like that. It's like the lack of social etiquette and social rules. Basically, there are no social rules. There's no right and what's wrong. When you're walking in the street, it's literally chaos in most parts of the city. Chaos, that's the word I can use to describe it. There's 10,000 things happening at once. There's somebody on a scooter trying to get to a small passage. There's an auto rickshaw who's like driving, swerving around. There's dogs trying to cross the road. There's monkeys sometimes like running around. There's cats sitting on the side. There's people selling vegetables. There's children running around. There's like so many people, and you get the idea. You get the picture. It's just chaos. So there's no social etiquette as such. There's more so like subtle social rules, but it's not like the Western world where you are sort of conditioned to behave in a very polite and social way. And it's not here at all. You know, even if you try to like somebody does something nice for you and you say thank you, people are taken aback. They don't know how to react to it. They're kind of uncomfortable sometimes. But it's sort of like everybody's laid back in a way. It's sort of like laid back sort of thing. But there's no expectation to say please and thank you. There's no expectation for anything. So for example, if you go and ask for directions from a guy or a girl and they give you directions, you don't have to say thank you. You can just leave. You just don't say anything. You just get the directions and you're gone. It's normal. Point number 9, and this is another sort of financial point. So things seem cheap when they are really not. So the US dollar is worth 74 rupees. The currency here is called the rupee. And things seem like really cheap. So for example, if you go to the store, if you go to the restaurant, you might get a full meal for 100 rupees or even less than that, maybe 70 rupees. And that's like $1.40 or like a dollar something. And you're like, what? You can get a full meal for $1, which is, you could get like a slice of pizza for $1 maybe someplace in New York or in some big cities, right? But you're not gonna get like a full course meal for $1. And things are just really cheap. You could go like halfway across the city for like $2. You're not gonna get that with Uber or anything like that in the Western world. So things seem really cheap here, but in local terms, they're not cheap. They're normal, and some things are expensive too. So for example, the auto rickshaw rides are sort of a middle class luxury here. They're not something people take on a daily basis because it does add up. It is expensive, and the median income in India, I believe, is around 3,000 US dollars. I think might not be right on that. Okay, point number 10, final point. And on this one, people experience it to different degrees, but I have experienced a lot of lying and cheating. So people lie about really small things just to make a little bit of money, and they try to cheat you out of a little bit of money. So for example, the auto rickshaw drivers, not all of them, some of them, and it's a minority, I have to admit, but it still happens consistently enough that I have to bring it up. They might quote you like 50, and then when you give them 50, if they catch that you're not paying attention or something like that, they'll say, oh, you gave me 20, give me 30 more. This is the important point where people pretend like they're not lying. They have like the blankest expression on their face. They just lie to your face. They have no remorse, no guilt, and they pretend like they're not lying. And you're like, you question whether you're wrong when you know you're right. You start questioning yourself. But that's how good people are at lying in India sometimes. And that's happened to me on multiple occasions. As a tourist, you'll experience it when you go to the market. They're going to charge you double or triple because you're a foreigner. Or if you get a quote for a taxi service, or if you get a quote for an auto, you're going to be charged more. But that's not so much cheating as sort of just taking advantage. I'm talking about like direct, blatant lying and cheating. That's not to dissuade anybody from coming to India. It's not supposed to be a negative video. It's just my personal challenges as an Indian American living in India. And you know what? I've made this video on the challenging parts of India, or the so-called negatives, but I'm going to make a video on the 10 positive things about India, which by far outweigh the negatives. It's not even close. The positives of living here are just, you can't even like compare the two. So thank you for joining me today. My name is Gilla Music. You can check out my music on Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Please consider supporting the channel by clicking the subscribe button, hitting that notification bell for the next video. And I thank you guys for tuning in. I'll see you next time.